another on Psilocybin tonight with a friend and colleague, Greg Lake. Those of you who don't know are not paying attention. Greg is all over the psychedelic space. He is one of, I was thinking about this today, Greg. Are you probably the best known psychedelic attorney? I mean, everywhere I go, everybody's like, yep, I know Greg. I know Greg. You've been in this for a long fucking time, man. You've been working hard. So give a little bit about your background and how you got into this for those that don't know.
So I started, I was a drug addict for 17 years. I started taking psychedelics when I was 12. Obviously at that point, it wasn't on the level that I am now, right? You know, that kind of evolved over time to understand the sanctity of these substances, right? But so I was a drug addict in about 2010. It was right when I got out of law school, 2011. A friend of mine back home in Texas had bought this big house, and it was just him living there. And we were like drinking beer one day, and he was like, "Man, I'd really like some mushrooms." I was like, "Me too." And like, it's a small East Texas town. We didn't know anybody, you know what I mean? So me being, coming from law school, I started doing some Google research, and I was like, well, hell, we can just grow them easily. Look, they got these kits here you can buy. Like, let's try this. And so, and just mind you, I was a full-blown opiate and alcoholic, opiate alcoholic at this time. And so we bought it, started to grow it. We were successful first run. And I'll never forget our first time we ate some. We took it out to the lake after work on a Friday, went out there and like watched the sunset over this lake in East Texas. And we actually made tea. And that was the first mystical experience I had. And now I didn't have that framework then, right? I didn't know this was a mystical experience, as I was giving very profound insights that basically were like, until you kick all this shit, like you're continue to be sick, you're never going anywhere. And it made me cry, because it was so profound, and just like I knew what I had to do. And then went through a bunch. I mean, I ended up homeless. I got kidnapped in 2014, which I just made a video about it. Because later on, the mushrooms told me to go hug my attacker, to the kidnapper. And so I went back home and hugged this woman. And yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so I ended up going to rehab, a lockdown. It was more like it was a work camp. The place I was at has been sued for labor law violations, but I was in there for 31 months. Very intense program.
Holy shit!
That's really where I started. Yeah, that's where I started to grow spiritually. They made us work in the power plants in South Louisiana, building scaffolds for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 8 months on end. And I tell people, it's like, I used to look at myself in the mirror every morning and like say, is today the day it's going to break me? And that's where I started to get real spiritual about, because to me, it's like when you push your mind or body beyond its limits, you're working in spirit beyond that point. Right. So that's where I kind of got into it. Now, when I got out and started getting sober, where I was sober. Right. And so then I started working with the Sager mushroom, and it took on a completely different character. I was visited by an entity, Anubis, back in, this was like probably late 2019. And I was instructed to write my first book on psilocybin, and I was told that my higher path would be revealed. And so I wrestled with it for a long time. When COVID hit, it kind of just presented the opportunity. I was working for a maritime law firm, but we were working from home. So I just wrote my first book on psilocybin research. I was very fascinated in it. And, I'll never forget the first time I read some of those studies that confirmed that these people were having mystical experiences, that immediately resonated with me, right? And that was the first time I was able to frame what was occurring to me. I said, oh yeah, those are the ones I'm having, right? These mystical religious experiences. So I wrote the book. Within a week from publishing it, I was approached by a gentleman in Louisiana where I was living, like, hey, as ex-Christian pastor, I have an affinity to meet up with these people. And he's just like, yeah, well, I want to start a psychedelic church. What do you know about it? And I said, well, I don't really know much. And then he pointed me at the UDV and Santo Daime cases. After I read those opinions, it was game over from there. I was completely infatuated, and still am to this day, in particularly this question of what is a religion, right? As it relates to the sacramental consumption of entheogens. And so, yeah, that spurred 2 more books, obviously directly on this topic. I've done close to 50 church projects over the last 2 years. Kind of dwindling down towards the end of my active doing that, more towards the I'm going to do the master nonprofit for entheogenic churches. But yeah, so that's been it, and it's been an incredible ride. I've worked a lot, and it's been challenges, but it's so fulfilling. I mean, I tell people that, I feel like I'm at the apex of my existence when I can wake up every day, work to make a direct positive impact in the lives of a lot of people, and put a few dollars in my pocket along the way. Like that to me is like the pinnacle of living, and so that's kind of how I got into it, where I'm at today.
Wow. All right, let's stop there. There's a whole bunch
right
there. So where you left off, I'm going to start. You say you're starting to pull back from incorporating churches and doing that work, or?
Yeah, I got a couple other big projects I'm going to do. And to be honest, during my last medicine session with the sacred mushrooms, it was relayed to me that the next move is to consolidate power amongst the churches into a unified nonprofit, right? To collect resources, provide for a common legal defense. Moreover, we'll set safety and diversion standards. Okay. We'll come up with some tenets or foundational beliefs that we can all jive with. But I think another thing besides provide a common legal defense is we're going to go ahead and start reaching out to experts, right? What experts are we going to need to testify about these various sacraments at trial? Find these experts, get in good with them, maybe have them do some publications for our website or YouTube interviews, and really get those people in line. Because again, that way we can literally be frontline defense at the drop of a dime, be there and be ready. At the call. And to be honest, I think I'll probably seed fund it with some of my own funds. Yeah.
So is that what Entheo Connect is going to be? But no, that's a separate thing.
Separate. Yeah, this is the Entheogenic Church Association.
Okay. All right. Wow. So this is a little bit in lines of what we've been talking about with Steve out in fucking Divine Assembly. I forget what's the state. It's not Iowa.
Utah.
Yeah, we just interviewed him. It's like Idaho, Iowa, Utah. There's a few states that I forget even exist. Man, so yeah, we just did a really wonderful interview, or I've done several wonderful interviews with folks who have been through recovery with psilocybin and other psychedelics, and it's just like there's that research that's recently come out about alcoholism, and it's just incredible. It's incredible how broadly these plants can be used to improve the quality of life, and what it comes back to is that mystical experience, is that if even call it religious experience. And that's what, maybe we can talk some about that. We were kind of just riffing here before we hopped on about the kind of the baggage and trauma and misunderstanding that there is around the idea of religion, which, the Christian church, particularly the Catholic Church, has done a real number fucking a lot of people's heads up when it comes to religion. But it seems like a great opportunity for psychedelic churches to really kind of reclaim that and help people understand that religion doesn't have to be a dirty word. Church isn't a dirty word.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, just to be honest with you, the first sacred ceremony I ever attended was in Texas. It was a Bufo ceremony back in late 2020. And it was the most, I'll never forget. I hopped out of the car, and before I even got to the front door, this was kind of out in the country, right? They got a plot of land and stuff. And I get out, and before I even get to the front door, 3 people came up and hugged me, told me they loved me, and told me that they were glad that I was there. And I just realized that all that's required here is just to be my true authentic self. That's all these people want, is me to just be me. It's beautiful. And so many people beyond the ceremonies, beyond the sacrament, get healing and maintain healing through being in these very pro-social, positive environments.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, the sacrament is really, if it's even half of it, we talk about this. It's obviously what Sanctuary hinges upon. Our existence as an organization would not be if it wasn't for these sacred mushrooms, but it's the community that really gives power to the experience.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really kind of what I consider the religious part here, right? I kind of see it like this. We all hold these substances, natural earth or whatever, is sacred. We have agreed to come together to commune with these substances in a very circumscribed, ritualistic fashion, which we believe is most effective at elucidating a religious mystical experience. Okay. Within that experience, we receive guidance on our life. It would be specific life questions, general life questions, overarching life questions, ultimate life questions, past, present, future. All right, so we receive this guidance. It's all individualized, right? Like what's conveyed to Eric Osborne this Saturday night probably ain't going to be the exact same thing relayed to me. But then we all come together later and share our experiences, give each other feedback, try to help each other interpret these in a non-intrusive way. And then we just basically are walking each other's hand home, hand by hand, trying to walk each other home, and that's the beauty in it all. And that fundamentally that's no different than if I go to a Christian church on a Sunday, there's a pastor reading 2,000-year-old religious experiences to me, telling me how to apply this to my life, right? 7th millionth interpretation of it, right? This is the exact same thing, except we're just working on our own experiences, right? Which I'm not going to put relative weight to either of those, although I do personally feel that the direct experience, I think, has probably been shown also scientifically to be more profound and more capable of being a catalyst for significant positive pro-social life changes.
100%. And that's really what at least in my experience thus far, one of the things that sets you apart the most from other, at least attorneys in the field, is that you are consistently working with the medicine. Now we just did an interview with Victoria Littman, who a nonprofit religious attorney. She does a fair amount of work with sacrament, it seems like, as well. When that comes out, it's gonna be a good one. But that's what I've seen over the couple of years now that we've been working together, is that you practice what you preach. Which is something that in large part is missing in overall psychedelic culture. Now, it's completely valid. And I love the fact that someone can have a single psychedelic experience and for the rest of their life, they can be advocates for psychedelics. I love that. I think that's a testimony to the power of what we're working with here. But when we are going to be public leaders in the field of psychedelics, I don't buy into when you get the message, hang up the phone, Alan Watts. I believe that when you get the answer, when you get the message, ask another question.
That's exactly what I do, man. That's exactly. I'm to the point now where I'm really just asking about the fundamental nature of reality, life and death. I want to know more about these ultimate questions. But even to date, I've got enough answers to make me feel confident that we are eternal, that we are spirit, that this is just a stop on the way, that we are here to learn lessons, and we are here to serve our community, right? And so that's all I need. I'm not saying that's all I need to know, but fundamentally, that's all I need to know to put me on the path that I'm on. I feel very blessed that I've ended up where I'm at. I mean, people probably live lifetimes and lifetimes and not be in a position like I've been to really make a direct positive impact on people's lives, and I take it very seriously. And this is nowhere near about money for me. I make good money doing what I do, but I promise you, I've done as much volunteer work as I've done paid work. And to be honest, as I go further, I'll do more volunteer work than I do paid work. And that's perfectly okay. It's about, the Native Americans say to do something every day that plants a seed to be 7 generations from now. And I consider what I'm doing every single day along those lines, right? And so that's what's important to me.
Well, that's another thing that I have identified with you as well, and one of the reasons why I've been comfortable with that relationship. There have been a number of times when you were like, "No, man, this is free. This is free. I'm just doing this." We've spent several hours on the phone that would have been hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars with attorneys, and I know that you're shifting gears, and I don't want anybody to think that you're just giving your time away necessarily. But I have seen you be incredibly generous to Sanctuary and to me personally, and that's something that I have tried to do as well. This is a tricky place that we're in, working with these sacred medicines that when people are in such vulnerable states, we're trying to be there. At least in my role, I'm trying to be there in the midst of one of the most important, profound, spiritual, mystical experiences of someone's life. And I want the thought of money to be as far away from that as possible. But at the same time, we all got to eat. We all got to feed our kids.
Right. For me, it's like this. One thing the medicine's told me is to engage in equal energy exchange. You know what I mean? And part of it's also self-love and respect to demand equal energy exchange from somebody. And I've worked with a lot of churches that write that into their belief statements, right? And I get it. Like, yeah, putting on a sacred ceremony takes a lot of legwork and logistical work, especially if you have to like find a property every time, like, charging people $200, $300, $400. I mean, look, a lot of people gawk at that. But in the same vein, I see the amount of work people put in, and like it can get kind of insane dealing with all that, right?
$300 for a session is nothing. I mean, if you have two sitters, and we always have two. We have one minister right now. It's just me and another cleric, and that's two people that are there solid for 8 hours, right? And then you've got an hour to 2 hours of prep and integration that are focused within that one session. I'm talking about how we're doing our private services. And I mean, two people, 12 hours, you start looking at it. I don't think there's a person on this, planet. I don't know. Like when you try to put a monetary value on somebody's time, like $10, $12, $20, $50 an hour, what's really, and especially when it's someone who is taking care of someone, if you're taking care of someone in such a vulnerable space that needs so much trust and needs so much skill. That's one of the things that I think we're going to see drastically shift in our understanding around psychedelics, is that trip sitting is not babysitting. This is not just like you're just hanging out there waiting for people to finish their trip. There are levels of skill and ability within trip sitting. And I have felt so many times, I can tell you so many times that I've been sitting there with somebody for, in hour 6 or whatever it is, and thinking to myself, like, even though right here in this moment, there maybe is nothing happening right now other than the person just going through their experience, and I'm there meditating and focusing and being, hyper present with them, thinking like how much energy, skill, practice, awareness, concentration that this requires to be fully present for that whole thing. So anyway, it's just been something that I've been trying to reconcile within myself, because for years before I went to Jamaica and did the retreats down there, I did ceremonies for people, and I would just say, give me some weed, give me some tobacco. Just I tried to follow that shamanic model, but you just can't live like that. And then we went to Jamaica, and it turned into this, tourism and all the stuff that goes along with villas and week-long stays and all that. And then the money picture shifts there, and it became too centered on the money. So now what we're doing with Sanctuary, I feel so much better about this every single day. Every time I have a private ceremony tomorrow that I'm doing, and it's just a whole different world to be doing this work directly within the context of the religious experience. What's your experience in kind of like, do you have any foot in the clinical therapeutic world, or is it all just strictly religious spiritual for you?
Oh, I mean, my personal experience of medicine is all religious spiritual, right? Like me personally, I could think of no other worse place to consume a psychedelic than in like some therapist's office, to be honest with you, y'all. But look, there's a whole, just like the retreats in Jamaica charging $10,000. There are people who probably wouldn't go to any place that didn't charge them $10,000. You know what I mean? It's like there's a whole demographic of people for that. Right. And that's where those people feel comfortable and want to go, so there should be that option for them. But there should also be the option for people who can't afford a $10,000 treatment to go sit in a sacred ceremony with a community of people somewhere. You know what I mean? And that's where, and I'll kind of bleed this in a little bit to, the pharmaceutical companies, through, I believe, some attorneys in this space and some organizations, are trying to significantly narrow and limit the religious exemption more or less to ayahuasca, right? And if it's not ayahuasca, it's anything that isn't a specific 1,000-year-old lineage-based practice, right? You're not protected. That's what they're going to say. What do they call it? Shaky legal ground. Okay. And it's funny because in the press, you see these people telling reporters, oh, yeah, this is shaky legal ground. The same lawyers have filed a whole lawsuit in Arizona, like saying, oh, so this other person isn't on shaky legal ground, but everybody else who isn't, shaky legal ground. You know what I mean? And it's just like, It's incredible. And then you get these reporters, that's what they want to hear. They want to hear this is shaky legal ground. You know what I mean? Because they'll talk to me for an hour and a half and, sit there and go back and forth. And I'm just consistently chopping down their arguments. And then they just go somewhere else till they hear shaky legal ground. And that's what they publish. I'm more or less done talking with reporters. For real, they've done wasted almost about 3 or 4 hours of my time. I'm done. Like if you want to go shop around for an opinion, go be a defense attorney, corporate defense attorney. They're good at that. They can sure shop around experts so they get their opinion that they want. Don't come bother me.
So where's this happening? I haven't seen any of this in terms of trying to pigeonhole the religious exemption just to ayahuasca.
So, and it's not overt. It's not overt, by the way. You got to look at the patterns, okay? And you got to look at some of these lawyers' field of business. So a lot of these lawyers are regulatory attorneys, right? A lot of them worked in the marijuana regulatory framework, right? Well, if the religious exemption blows up, that's less regulatory lawyer hours that they're going to be able to get in the future, helping these big companies with money try to comply with some type of regulatory scheme. They, I guess, believe that religious practitioners are going to undercut, that. Right. And if there's money involved, we don't care what your religious freedom is. We don't care what, really the law says about what a religion is or what's protected. Shaky legal ground, and it's just, you kind of get to see this because it really troubled me. I'm just like, because it doesn't make sense. It's like, how could someone who's suing the government in court then go and say that this is shaky legal ground? Because let me just tell you, if I felt that my client was on shaky legal ground, I sure as hell probably wouldn't jump to go file a lawsuit against the federal government. Moreover, the government just offered to settle with the Arizona Yahe. I promise you, if the government felt that the Arizona Yahe was on shaky legal ground, okay, they wouldn't have asked to settle. They would have filed a motion for summary judgment at the very least, if not taken it to trial. You owe a duty, their clients, U.S. government, they owe them a duty that if someone is on shaky legal ground, you don't settle, especially on an issue like this. You don't settle. So and that's what upsets me. It's because the reporters ignore the apparent facts and take someone's word that they like and want to portray and just put that. It's terrible reporting is what it is. It's basically like you're doing no fact checking, no kind of impeaching or like, hey, well, hey, you're saying shaky legal ground, but what about this case that you filed here? What about that case? How is that different? None of those questions apparently are being asked. They're definitely not being reported on. And so it's just terrible reporting. Simple as that.
Yeah. I can think back. I've seen a few articles that did
it's
make it
a common thing.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I had always taken it at face value that these journalists were trying to just kind of walk the line, but now that, as you talk about it like that, I mean, especially around psilocybin and what we saw in Oregon, I don't know how much you were involved in that. I know I saw you on some of those meetings, but behind the scenes, it sure seemed to me like there were some special interests, if you will, that had an influencing factor over the religious exemptions in Oregon, which makes no sense. The fucking Oregon is where peyote was proven out to be a sacrament. So how are we going to go 5-7 years later and then not include psilocybin under the same umbrella?
Yeah, no, this is all special interest. And, kind of like with the reporters, spiritually, I just came to the spot. Well, I'm done talking to reporters. I'll just go show them in court what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, and I get that these days as I get older, I get that way. It's like, I'm done talking about this. Let me just go do it. Like, it's not, I've been really proud of myself since I got out of rehab. It's like I actually follow through and get stuff done, and like I can do this, and so that's why I'm doing the Entheogenic Church Association, to really put a broader message out there and show with expert and academic papers and testimony that your run-of-the-mill entheogen-based religion, like sanctuary, right? And I don't mean to like, I'm just saying like you're not attached to Maria Sabina or some ancient Mesoamerican tradition, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
Look, the science is out there. People have religious experiences, right? And do we actually live in a country where you can take a piece of earth, have a religious experience, but that can't be your religious practice? You're not being sincere. You're on shaky legal ground. I don't think we live in that country.
I hope that we never do. I mean, on paper we don't right now. If it's changing, I don't know. I'm curious about that as time goes on. Also, Tristan, just go ahead and drop that link. Anybody wants to hop in and be a part of the conversation, you are welcome to click the link in the comments. If you got any questions for Greg, any comments, anything like that, you can come in and be a part of this conversation.
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to say, and I want to talk about, and I'm sure you've experienced this in the medicine too. It's, you reach a certain point where you reach cosmic unity. You know what I mean? What does that tell you? It's like, oh shit, we're all one. Like really, everybody's just my divine mirrors. But I've seen so many people in this space every day talking about how they're different or better. They're unsafe. They are so bad. Practitioner, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's at each other's throats. And I swear, it's like, I swear some of these people have never had a psychedelic experience before. I'm serious. Yeah. I can't see where they have. Like, really? Either that or they're not taking it seriously.
Or just a couple. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I came to a couple of years ago. I mean, it's been coming over time. I have certainly, especially at Myco down there, because it was this like for-profit business in Jamaica. It was the first one. It was the first public psilocybin mushroom retreat in the world. Amsterdam, there was some truffle stuff happening before that, but this was the first. It was centered around mushrooms. And then Jamaica became, I knew, like, I was afraid of kind of being too public because I knew there'd be a bunch of capitalist sharks that wanted to come in and just take over and that kind of started to happen. And then I started to get defensive and started to like try to box in. And it's kind of the nature of a for-profit business, right? Is to, you're in competition with businesses within the industry. There's very little actual true cooperation. There's a lot of business people that will say, oh yeah, we're cooperative. And then behind closed doors, they're like, we're going to fucking out compete them, blah, blah, blah. And at a certain point I was like, look, dude, like is it all one or not? Right. Are we all one or not? And if we're all one, then stop pointing your finger at the other people over there. And just do you, let them do them. It's going to work itself out in this big cosmic mashup. And that's going to be the beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is that, two people can go to the same ceremony or retreat. One person might have a terrible experience. One person might have a breakthrough experience. My question is, did you come out in one piece? Yeah. Good deal. So you didn't have a good experience? Don't go back there. You had a great experience. Maybe you go back. Maybe you go somewhere else. Like, it's that simple. You know what I mean? But, people take, I had a terrible experience. It's like, they're a horrible facilitator. No one should ever go there. Telling people behind their back, like, don't ever go there, and talking all this stuff. And it's like, man. And then a lot of times it's like, well, who had a bad experience? Oh, they don't want to come out and say, I'm like, okay, well, I can tell you this. Don't ever come to me with allegations with someone who's not going to come out. Look, I respect their right not to say nothing, but they need to respect my right to be non-convinced. You know what I mean? When I don't know who's making allegations.
Right. And then I don't want to come across like I or you. I know that you don't, and I know that I don't support or Tristan support, people being abusive or people abusing power. But at the same time, like, the reality is, every single institution has corruption within it, period. And the more we point fingers at the corrupt ones, then the more energy and attention. I mean, how did Donald Trump win? Because everybody was saying all that fuck Trump stuff. All that Trump is like all you're doing is putting attention on the thing. And I remember like back when Obama was running, friends of mine, and I am a registered independent. I have been since I was 18 years old. But back then, people had bumper stickers that said "No Obama," right? And it was like you're drawing attention to the thing that you don't want to highlight. So I'm just using politics as a kind of it's a good example of what we're talking about here. But I mean, I guess there is a question though. You're talking about a organization that kind of helps centralize religious groups, or helps to give religious groups a single platform to protect themselves from. Like, there's got to be some kind of I hate to use the word regulations, but oversight in place, I think, to prevent, real abuses of power. I don't know what that looks like in this world. The Catholic Church, obviously, we saw what happened with them when there was no oversight, and there still isn't, which is like, that's the thing. Like, they did all that shit and they're still doing it. Nobody stopped anything.
I want to say, Eric, I remember, I don't know where I read this, but it seems like there was a very blatant abuse case that occurred, like sexual abuse. And it's like the law enforcement didn't even like prosecute them. They let the church handle it. That's what I'm talking about. Like, these people are that far out of it. And, and that's why I tell people all the time. It's like, look, churches break laws all the time. Other religions, the Catholic Church serves alcohol to minors. My cousins are a member of Catholic Church back home in Texas. When they were 14, they were drinking wine. Nobody says nothing about that, right? That's second grade.
I think in the second grade is when we did first communion. I think you could get wine.
And I hate to say, and people get shocked when I say what I'm about to say, but their record with minors is not great. Put alcohol in there, like, this is headed for disaster. Is it not? I mean, I'm just saying.
You're 100%. Hey, I was raised Catholic. You're right. You're right. Yeah. So what do we do?
Past that, but you can't look past like a group of adults being peaceful on a piece of property, like communing with some kind of sacrament for 4 or 5 hours. Get real.
Yeah. No, I am very much in the favor of allowing the process to work itself out. And I think it is unfortunate that at times that means that there are things that will get shoved under the rug. Like, I don't like that, but it is human nature. It is the nature of institutions. Like our government, there is so much fuckery and abuse that takes place in our political system. And how many thousands of times has shit been called out? Have we seen instances where abuse happened, right, of any sort, and it was just kind of shoved under the rug, and then we go back to like nothing ever happened? And it's a painful thing for us, for those who care and those who really want to see people heal. They want to see problems solved. They want to see things run right. It's painful, but at the same time, like, this is human nature, and it's what humans have been doing forever, and they always will.
Yeah, I mean, anything we see, I mean, this is my personal religious beliefs, but it's like everything's a karmic cycle. You know what I mean? And we see stuff happen and it's terrible, and it shocks your senses. You're like, man, that's terrible. But at the end of the day, I just have to trust that source. This is all in the plan, as crazy as it seems. And as some people, man, have done some very terrible things, and when they go to get healing, could very well be where the karma gets them, unfortunately, right? You know what I mean? And I just try to kind of, again, I'm not going to sit there and support it or if there's something actionable, not take action. But at the same time, I just, in a sense, just trust that everything is in divine timing, order, and sequence. And yeah, as shocking as it is, all this is just kind of again, part of a divine plan, even though it doesn't seem like it at times. But you're right. If there's something actionable, meaning that there is a reported incident with an identified offender, identified victim, evidence to support victims, you know what I mean, then that action needs to be taken, right? But unfortunately, I think a lot of times in this space, a lot of these accusations, sometimes it's really just like a personal beef, or or someone will say something, then someone who does have a personal beef or in competition with this other person will then just blows it up. And someone I worked with the other day was like, do you know these people? I was like, yeah, I worked with them. They're like, well, their retreat's terrible and they've been hurting people, blah, blah. I said, well, that's great. So now you have the opportunity to build one that's safe and secure and that people can go to. It'll be a good alternative, right? To try to shift them from because the last thing I want to do is waste an hour of my time down talking someone else. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Okay,
Absolutely.
If someone was hurt as severe as you're saying, they should have gone to law enforcement. Okay, that if something that severe is definitely out of our hands, and like I say, it's your opportunity to create that safe and sacred space that these people aren't creating, and then by theory, everyone will come to you, right? I mean,
that's it, man. If you see a problem, create a solution.
And that's one thing I see all the time is that you see these people, especially online, running their mouth, but not one time have they come from the keyboard and gone and done something to actually try to solve the issue that they wear this thing out trying to talk about. You know what I mean? We can talk about stuff all day. Very rarely does that ever effectuate change.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
It's actually getting out there and doing something that really effectuates change.
Yeah, no, that's been my driving force since as long as I can remember, back, you name it, so far back, all the things I've been, but particularly psychedelics, that was the thing. This is completely fucked that they are illegal, that this is the stigma around it. And so, I'm going to go to Jamaica and I'm going to start a retreat there. And then seeing this is completely fucked that it's being turned into a dry, clinical, therapeutic, only very materialistic, when this is at its core a mystical, spiritual, metaphysical experience. So then I said, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna go up here and do something different. And I've also I can't, eventually I'm gonna get to tell, I got some stories to tell. I want to get a little distance from some things, but eventually I got some stories to tell, because there are definitely players out there that are making false accusations, that are leveraging personalities, right? You got a personality like mine that isn't afraid to say anything.
I've noticed
that. Like yourself, then you're going to become a target at some point, and you're going to say something that somebody doesn't like, and they're going to want to fucking put your head on a stick for it.
The crazy thing that it upsets a lot of people in the space, but there's sometimes people try to attack me, right? But the thing is that I've done a lot of work, good work for a lot of people with integrity. And there's more of those people that know me like that out there that, it's just and the crazy thing is I've never advertised to help people form for anything like that. It's just through word of mouth and referral, I've gotten every single person. And, it's been a blessing, I just made it a point to work hard, to get done in a timely manner, respond to emails, as quick as I can. And it makes a difference to the people. They feel supported, working with me, and I continue to apply those relationships through this next phase. Right. But, to me, it's more these days about actions than words. And it's, social media, unfortunately, has given everybody a platform where it's and let me speak about my personal experience. I used to get triggered by some of the stuff people said on social media, and I used to try to interject my opinion into there. But after a while, I just got to, like you said earlier, I don't even direct my mental attention towards it. If something's kind of inflammatory to me, I just keep scrolling. But there's some people out there, especially in this space, they can't help it, man. And I tell you, another thing is I'm so busy. I don't have time to sit there and go back and forth with anybody on Facebook, man. It's who has time? I just think people should sit back and say, if I have time to do this on my phone, on social media during the day or whenever, I need to probably fill my time with something. When I started filling my time and channeling my creative energy, completely changed. I actually found peace even though I was working more. Imagine that.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I guess I'd love to ask your thoughts on this. What do you tell someone who is being attacked publicly in a completely unjustified manner? Like, go ahead.
It's really situational, I would say, just depending on what it is. I mean, if someone's being libelous or slanderous and it's costing you money, sue them, but I'm like you, where your mind goes, energy flows. And I think for a lot of the time, especially if you generally have a good reputation and people know you as a good person, good reputable person, I wouldn't worry about it, because if the majority of the community already knows who you are, then they're going to see that this is, not right. But with me spiritually, where I'm at, it's like, I feel like we're all headed towards union. You know what I mean? Like we're elevating our consciousness to, community consciousness, and that even within our space, there's a lot of people and organizations that do nothing but sow discord, that will say these people, not these people, you, us, them, and it's like, again, it goes back to this, like, have these people ever really experienced the medicine? I mean, I don't know. Am I missing something? Like, I just, like, every day that I get older, I'm like, these differences, subtle differences in people, I just like try to even block that out of my mind. I just don't feel like in this space with what we're doing, what we're working with, these sacred medicines, who, by the way, give pretty much every single person that consumes them relatively similar experience, right? I've never had, taken any of these ancestral medicines and be like, oh, you're white. Okay, so now let me do this for you. Like, I've never had that. I've never had it, man. It's always like, you are spirit. We all are one. You know what I mean? Like, you see these other people, but really it's you. You're all manifestations of the divine. Treat others accordingly. And it just, that's where I want to go, And so a lot of times you'll see me avoiding jumping in a lot of these discord issues, right, that are just stoking division and stuff like that. I just spiritually, it's really off-putting to me, and my time is better spent being positive and proactive and doing stuff than digressing on this issue that I know for me is spiritually not right or pure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think even the Catholic Church, like, if people would have just like left the church, like, just, okay, yep, this is what this thing is about. I'm out of here, and because what ended up happening was, I feel like, and it's, again, like, I am in no way justifying that horrible shit that happened. There are some wicked fucking people out there raping children. Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
But the thing is the more attention we put on that, then it's just like giving that energy instead of taking that energy and going and creating something better. You see, all right, if the Pope is condoning the moving of these people around, that's fucking corrupt to the core. Just bullshit, And if psychedelics had kind of the same thing, if you had like a overarching organization that was the seat of, you'll never have that with psychedelics in general, but if you had that with, say, specific churches, like let's use what's it called, Soul Quest right now, right?
Okay.
Like,
let's talk about it. Yeah, that's a good topic. Let's bring this up.
I'm so curious what's going on with that. But if Soul Quest had a hierarchy that was basically condoning, even if it was passively condoning abuse, then everybody should just get the fuck out. Don't give them any more money. Don't give them any more time. Don't give them any more attention. Let law enforcement handle that can. What's actionable, and then GTFO. So anyway, that's just kind of that's the last thing I really want to say on kind of the negative energy.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing too. Here's my thought on it is that, look, if something like that is happening at one of these churches or circles, okay, and it's went and reported to the police, that they're going to be hot to trot to go shut this place down, right? And it's just not happening. It's kind of like with the Soul Quest case. And again, Do I support the specific practices of Soul Quest? I don't know. I've never been there. I know there's been some people that have had some amazing breakthrough experiences there. I know that there's some amazing people working in the space now because of their initial experience at Soul Quest. I know that Soul Quest has a pretty big community and a lot of very competent supporters, I feel. Do some people probably have bad experiences there? I'm sure they do. Do I agree? You know, from my impression, they probably hold too large of ceremonies, right? But the thing is, there's a whole demographic of people that are lined up to pay $1,200 or whatever their price is to go sit there. So who am I to sit here and say anything about it, right? Now, the DEA is going to have trouble when they go to court in the 11th Circuit because, you know, someone died there, I think in 2017. Terrible ordeal, right? But what we have here is that the government's going to try to go say Soul Quest is unsafe. In as Soul Quest lawyer, I would say, that's funny. Judge, you know, and they brought it up. Someone died there in 2017, but obviously the DEA didn't have too big of a safety concern because we're still serving. Obviously, the DEA have to take that lick for judge. The judge is going to be like, yeah, well, someone died in 2017. You haven't shut them down. We're going on 2023 now. What's up, DEA? Like, are you even doing your job? You know, and so they're going to have some questions to answer in those regards. And I do think that Soul Quest case will be heard by the 11th Circuit by the end of this year. And look, again, the reason why I support Soul Quest is because if they win, that is a huge leg up for other religious practitioners in this country to feel just that more secure in their practice. Whatever Soul Quest practices are, I'm not too involved. I've never been there, right? But on a legal basis, I support their case because that's good. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah,
you know,
I get that. Especially
if there's
because
major abuse occurring, let the police go shut them down. Have those people report whatever has happened to them to the police and let law enforcement handle. I mean, that's what we do everywhere else. You know, for some reason, this space like that misses people. You know, like. Like, go tell the police. Like, good Lord. Like, if you've been done bad, I recommend go turn people into law enforcement. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, psychedelics are definitely having a different measuring stick put against them than other therapeutic, wellness, religious organizations out there. That's for sure. And I mean, I understand culturally why that's happening, but it doesn't make it right. You know.
I agree. Look, and again, I don't like the idea of the corporatization of psychedelics. I know. But to the extent they stay the hell away from the religious practitioners, I'm good with it. You know what I mean? As long as people have the ability to go sit affordably in a sacred ceremony, I'm good with it, right? Because again, there's a whole demographic of people who are willing and able to pay 10 grand to go sit in a doctor's office. So who am I to deny those people that, right? But the minute that they start intruding on people's religious practice, where I draw the line, and I see it, like I said earlier, I see it slowly creeping in.
I know it's completely different, but like, I mean, how many people each year end up dying at the chiropractor?
Yeah. Don't even get me started on that train like that.
I don't know how many people die from a chiropractor.
You'll hear about it every few months. Someone ends up having their neck manipulated, and it'll sever a vertebral artery, and they end up dying. Yeah, because the motions end up putting a lot of stress on those areas. But I'm just saying, like, the notion of certain the ways that we approach safety, it's like you point out a needle in a haystack sometimes. Now, if it, like you said, if it is a large reoccurring thing, address it. But the idea of cancel culture is very pervasive now.
No, that's right. It's there's no perspective to it many times. And if you like, for instance, the FDA, the DEA, if you go look at some of the prior scheduling decisions. So I recently read a lawsuit. There's a girl attorney I met in Arizona that just pro se sued the federal government to invalidate the Controlled Substances Act. And in a beautifully drafted complaint makes some very compelling arguments for entheogenic plant medicines based upon prior scheduling decisions. And what the picture she paints there is it's like, it really doesn't matter how dangerous something is. If the chemistry can be reliably reproduced on a mass scale and pharmaceutical companies can profit off of it, then it gets on a lower schedule. That's it. Those are the only requirements to get on a lower schedule. One of the cases she brought out was Ambien. And she started talking about
the drug.
I knew Ambien was no good because of the Tiger Woods incident. But I knew Ambien was no good. But man, the numbers she pulled out of people like dying and deaths involved with it, it's terrible. And like these things are prescribed like candy, and it's like by benzodiazepines. You know, when I was a drug addict, you know how many people I saw almost die of seizures? Like personally saw them almost die of seizures, not having one for like 8 hours. You know, and they're feeding these things to people like crazy. It's to be honest with you, like it might be more dangerous to go to the doctor than it would be to come see you at Sanctuary. Oh, actually, I know it would in most cases.
I'd say, yeah. The track record, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's much more, and I'll take that back. It is more dangerous to go to a medical doctor than go to you. And that's just like, it's like this. It's like, oh, well, studies show that psilocybin's relatively no shit, huh? Damn, they've only been taking it for 10,000 years. And when I researched my book in 2020, I could only find one case where some girl with a heart condition smoked a bunch of cannabis and took some mushrooms and had a heart attack and died. But even the case report more so related it to the marijuana, which can increase your heart rate more so than the psilocybin can. It was more related to the marijuana than the psilocybin. It just seemed to be casually related. And if you look at a lot of these tryptamine scheduling decisions, what you see is a lot of the cases that they really hang their hat on involved other drugs.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
No, even Amsterdam, when mushrooms were made illegal in Amsterdam, I was there in whatever it was, the year before they were made illegal, I was there. A diplomat's daughter jumped out a window while on mushrooms and coke and alcohol and blah and blah and blah. The same year in Amsterdam that this one person died, and it was attributed to mushrooms. That same year. And I interviewed Jasper down in Fungi Academy, who had the numbers on this, but it was like 1.5 million doses of mushrooms were sold that year. And there was one death that was even partially attributed to psilocybin, and they made mushrooms illegal. Like, where the fuck else does that happen? What other realm do you see that? And I think, like you're saying, I think that, you know, I don't want to get into the conspiratorial aspect of it, but there is big money. There are big influencers that are involved that I really truly think do not, because we're already seeing what psilocybin and psychedelics are doing to the pharmaceutical industry. We're already seeing the potential that they have on the alcohol industry, right? And those stakeholders do not want to see that ground shift. So I see we got Sasha wanting to come in here and talk about SoulQuest. Go ahead, Greg. What were you going to say?
Yay, let's talk about it. Oh, and Eric, let's talk in private sometime. I got a project that that is trying to circumvent the FDA process. It's very interesting. I'll talk to you about one-on-one.
Okay. Hey, Sasha, what's going on, bud?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you, Eric, you too, Tristan, and Greg. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you for the first time.
How are you tonight? Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. I wanted to start off by saying that I've been following your work in the space for a while, and I appreciate the fact that you're helping out these churches get their feet on the ground, so to speak, and make sure they're in good legal standing. That's always a good thing to do. And just to try and connect with you on a personal level, like you, I have also dealt with homelessness and issues related to substance use in my own life, and I appreciate your willingness to speak candidly about these subjects. It's not often that people are willing to do that, and I applaud you for that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's my truth.
Same here. But we're always trying to be better people and improve upon ourselves and help others, and that's one of the things that motivates me in this space. I've been following SoulQuest for a number of years now, and I could probably talk for hours on this subject, but I wanted to ask you a question. Specifically, you released a letter back in November of last year. It might have been October, but you talked about SoulQuest and among other things.
Sixth chapter of my third book,
Exactly. And among other things, you said that the wrongful death lawsuit that is currently being litigated is based upon, as you said, quote, unfounded allegations. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're in the discovery, okay, and not through a trial phase of a lawsuit, they're allegations, right? Until they're proven to a jury or to a judge and conclusively shown to be facts of the case, it's all allegations, right? Until proven, is what I meant by that statement.
I see. Well, full disclosure, I'm no lawyer, but I do have a well of knowledge to base some statements on. Although it's true that you can't prove something like that, like you just described, there are times in which there is compelling evidence that can sway an audience. Would you agree?
No, yeah, I would agree. An audience, right? Not a jury, not a judge. So just so we're clear there, not legally standard sufficient.
Understood. Well, there's a lot that's gone on in relation to that wrongful death lawsuit that I feel should be discussed in a honest and respectful manner. One of the things that's really bothered me is that there was a 3-hour delay between the time when Brandon was first recognized as non-responsive and the time that emergency medical officials were called. And during this time, he was experiencing actions, behaviors, symptoms that are consistent with a medical emergency. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts in regards to the 3-hour delay between time when EMTs arguably should have been called and the time that they were actually called.
No, I wasn't there, man. So I mean, I don't know what else to say. Probably should they have called? Probably, but I wasn't there on the scene to ascertain the facts. You know what I mean? Like, I can't retroactively put myself in someone's shoes and be like, oh yeah, they should have done that. I wasn't there. I don't know.
All right. Well, would you consider the fact that Chris Young went on Netflix to speak of the death and after having wrongfully alleged that Brandon was previously on prescription medications, claimed that, quote, if you lie, you die. That was a rather strong statement. What do you think about that?
That's my impression. That's what they say to everybody that comes into Soul Quest. And then this is just, again, conjecture, but I've heard that that's like on their waiver form. That's what they tell people before they fill it out.
That does drive home the severity of it. And I think I had a friend, I took a friend to Peaceful Mountain Way out here, the only ayahuasca trip I ever did. It was actually a year ago, 2 weeks from now. And when we got out there, he, after the fact, disclosed that he was on tramadol, I think is what it was. And
Ultram, yeah. And
I was just like, what the fuck? Do you not understand the seriousness of what you're like? This is your life.
With tramadol. Go ahead.
I know that at least I've read there has been some incidences of serotonin poisoning with tramadol, and he was really desperate for help, and he was just continuing to try psychedelics and doing everything he could. And then when I found out that he had not disclosed or been truthful about his medical history, I was just like, dude, this can fucking kill you. So I mean, I don't know. Do you is that specific statement? Do you have a problem with that statement, Sasha? That if you lie, you die? I mean, that seems like a pretty strong and
transparent.
Like a legit warning.
Well, taken from one perspective, you can say that if people are not being forthcoming about their medical information, adverse events can happen. And I can't deny that's a fact. However, in my opinion, it's a bit, to say the least, distasteful for a church leader, a minister, to go on television and, I'll be honest, lie about a former congregant's medical status before then claiming that he was lying and, well, he died because of it.
So I actually don't even know the deal, like how Brandon, it was Brandon that passed away.
It was related to combo, wasn't it? It was a combo treatment.
There's a whole bunch of factors that should be taken into consideration. When it comes down to it, at the very end of the day, in my opinion, if emergency medical professionals were called once Brandon began exhibiting symptoms that were consistent with a bona fide medical emergency, then there is a darn good chance that he could have lived and told his tale. However, that is not the case. If you ask me, a good portion of, again, this is my opinion, a good portion of the fault rests on those who oversaw Brandon's condition and not call emergency. Actually listen to the 911 for every. You'll hear Chris the fact that Brandon was given ayahuasca and combo about Brandon's level of respiration, ability to breathe. It was rather concerning given, if you go on my YouTube page, you could listen to it for yourself. But there's a lot going on in that case that, and I say this with all due respect to SoulQuest, they haven't put forward any evidence that has countered or rather sufficiently opposed the evidence that has been raised by the Begley family and their attorney. I have serious concerns about the church.
The family is suing.
Go ahead.
The family is suing SoulQuest. Is that correct?
That is correct. And once you also take into consideration the fact that a former volunteer of SoulQuest just came forward to reveal, or rather allege, that SoulQuest officials had previously, I'm trying to think of the right word here, neglected congregants while they were experiencing what they felt to be bona fide medical emergencies. And when this volunteer raised these concerns to the higher ups at SoulQuest, their position as a volunteer was terminated. You can find this information on Yelp. It's under a 2-star review.
All I'm going to say is I'm so glad that psilocybin has been the medicine that is called to me.
I get Harry with ayahuasca and stuff, man.
Dude,
Really
what Sasha, what you're saying, like there has, if you knew how many times people have been screaming at me, I'm fucking dying. I need to get me help. Get me out of here. I'm fucking dying. And it's just purely their ego trying to latch on, So like, I'm not making excuses for anybody. I feel like it is like, I don't know. I feel like it's just so hard when like we're not in the mix of it. And like, I personally, like every time I've seen the SoulQuest thing, like just SoulQuest and the vibe of it, and 100 and something people in ayahuasca.
Yeah,
I'm just like, this shit ain't safe, man. I don't give a fuck. Like,
or enjoyable.
Or enjoyable. But I guess that's one of the questions that raises that I think is not spoken about enough in this entire discourse around psychedelics is personal responsibility and research of the places that you're going to, the medicines that you're using, how they're being used, and like all of that. I feel like because we're in this very young stage, that there's not enough real broad, good information out there to help people make a wise decision. And I don't know, like, again, like I'm not for or against SoulQuest or anybody else. I just like this equation, like how I understand it, what the mushrooms have taught me is that this equation began at best as we can tell with the Big Bang, and it has been unfolding and will continue to unfold. And there's really not a damn thing that we can do about it. We're all kind of convincing ourselves that we have free will because we do not. At least that's my kind of takeaway from a lot of these big mushroom trips. And so, but either way, like it seems like anybody who is looking at the whole picture and going down, I don't care if it is mushrooms. I can't imagine going and doing a 5-10 gram dose with 100 other people, especially if I need support and want real lasting support.
Yeah.
But I guess like I'd ask you also, Sasha, like what are your thoughts like this whole kind of reality that there are hundreds, thousands of industries like chiropractic. I didn't even know chiropractic had fucking deaths come out of it. I knew I didn't like a chiropractor. I knew I didn't like them cracking my neck because that shit scares me.
Yeah, I don't like it either. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Fuck that. But I guess like the question is like we've got all of these other fields that are operating. I mean, the vaccine is a great one in my mind. Like the vaccine, there are absolutely detrimental side effects, and some could argue death. But there's
vaccination reactions?
Where to all of it? I mean, every single thing. Like, so I guess the question is, like, with psychedelics in particular, like, are we, like, when do we stop kind of hyperbolizing the risk of psychedelics and treat it like any other industry or profession, etc.? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Totally. I think that's a great question. It's a question that comes up a lot. If you were to ask for my opinion, I think at the end of the day, such arguments would be could be distilled into what you might call a false equivalency. There's actually a really great Terence McKenna quote I came across the other day that's on this topic of, I think the term he used is moral relativism. If you give me just a few more seconds, it'll come up. But I admit that, you know, heck, I've been smoking since I was 16. I know that about 480,000 people a year in the US alone die from smoking related illnesses. And at the end of the day, that may be true, but that doesn't give people a right to say, well, psychedelics are therefore safer and we should therefore care less about the deaths that are attributed to psychedelics. I'm still looking for that Terence McKenna quote. It is really good. Trust me, you will want to hear this.
Mm-hmm. While you're looking for that, you know, just while you're looking for that, I want to give the audience who maybe was here last week and is continuing to follow this, or anybody that comes along, you know, Sasha and I had I feel like a very positive conversation through Instagram after the last conversation. That got a little bit heated, you know, just because it was just a little weird for everybody. And I guess the question that I would like to ask you though, Sasha, is like, kind of like what Greg and I were talking about early on, like, do you think there is more benefit in focusing and acting on the good in the psychedelic world, or focusing and acting on the bad that's in the psychedelic world?
That is a really good question. And I think at the end of the day, any fair and just actor should be speaking of the benefits of these substances while at the same time giving equal weight to the, shall we say, dark side. And my personal, where I'm coming from what I have seen interacting with all of the quote unquote leaders of the space, they're not willing to acknowledge these risks. They're not willing to talk about the dark side. They're willing to hype up their results in their clinical trials.
Oh yeah.
But they're not willing to talk about
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, I am but one tiny island in a vast sea of positivity. And I am doing what I can to raise awareness. And, you know, there are a few other small islands. You know, Symposia has their island, and Shayla Love has her island, and more or less that's about it. There are a few other great journalists who are raising awareness about these things. And I did find that Terence McKenna quote. It's about a paragraph long. The great evil that has been allowed to flourish in the absence of mathematical understanding, going back to, you know, the total number of deaths, what have you, is relativism. And what is relativism? It's the idea that there is no distinction between shit and shinola, that all ideas are somehow operating on equal footing. We have been taught that political correctness demands that we treat all these things with equal weight. We don't know how to ask the questions that expose some positions as preposterous, trivial, insulting to the intelligence, and unworthy of repetition. We have perfected politeness. We have perfected the ability to listen to damn foolishness without betraying so much as a flick of an eyebrow that we realize we're in the presence of. Now, I time to refine our mathematical skills, to learn to think straight, and not be afraid to denounce the pernicious forms of foolishness which are vishing the energies of our community and making us appear marginal and absurd in discourse about truly transforming society. And I think that's the end of the quote, by the way. And just to add on my opinions that yes, people are dying from doctors who aren't acting diligently or aren't performing their duty. When it comes down to instances like that, let's talk about instances like that and get the experts in the field to come together and address those problems and create solutions for them so they don't happen again. And when it comes to anthogenic churches like this, I feel that the leaders in our community should come together, and when they hear or see concerning evidence about particular churches, that they come together and start raising awareness about it, engaging in honest and frank discussions about it, and at the end of the day, not sweep deaths and adverse events under the rug, which has been the case with the MAPS clinical trials, which has been the case with a few other deaths at ayahuasca churches and ayahuasca retreats that I'm familiar with. Mm-hmm. I mean, heck, it even happened at a Zendo tent back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, I guess man, I mean, it's happened in clinical research. Like I know there was a suicide that occurred after one of the research instances where someone didn't get the benefit that they thought they would get. They killed themselves because they didn't have time to wait apparently for the next 6 months to get possibly a placebo, and it was never spoken about. I completely agree with you on this kind of equal weight to the reality. Like, we need to be talking about the reality of psychedelics, and like a huge part of that is that I feel like I should probably bring more attention to with psilocybin. I have seen it. At the same time, so let me just finish the thought. I have seen people have ongoing, like a 2-week long psychotic break brought on by psilocybin, right? Mm-hmm. I've never seen it happen any longer than 2 weeks. At the same time, like, what professional understandably wants to say, hey, I've got a client that's out there that can't go to work. They can't see anybody for 2 weeks because they're just still floating in the clouds, kind of thing. So like, I'm not justifying it, but like, I think like if we're going to look at the big picture, then we got to look at the big picture overall. And so like, I understand like an organization not wanting to like the folks out in Berea at Peaceful Mountain Way. Yeah. Like, I went out there and worked with them, and I feel like they're good-hearted people. They had someone die on site the day after a ceremony, and they didn't publicize that. And I don't blame them for not publicizing that. So like, you know, there's a bit of a balance here in people wanting to, in a field that is already very susceptible to a bunch of media hype. I think there is validity in someone saying, okay, like, we just had some shit go down, and we've got to like figure out, not cover our tracks, but like, we've got to get ourselves settled. It's traumatic. I can only imagine if you had someone die on your retreat, how fucking traumatic that has to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know? And so I guess my heart just goes out to everybody and wants to take a big picture look at the whole thing. So, but like within psilocybin, I mean, the need for real integration, and I don't mean just like one phone call after a trip, but like an integrative culture that you can come back and land in and develop out of. That's something that's not being talked about in the therapy. Like, you know, Oregon is going to see it. I've seen it myself. Oregon's going to see it when they start having all these people go to mushroom sessions. It's so funny that there is no discussion and all that shit that's talked about in Oregon with psilocybin and safety. There was not one time that I ever heard anybody talk about dosing ever. Like, you're going to have people giving somebody 10, 15, 20 grams of mushrooms. You're going to have somebody that takes 3 grams of mushrooms and has way massive trip. And, so it's just like, I don't know. There's just a whole lot to discuss here. And I do think it's a little bit not presumptuous, but it's going to take us time to unpack this conversation culturally. It's going to take decades for us to unpack this thing, And
I think too, with the churches, it's like, because of the gray legal status, I think really prevents a lot of, for sure, accountability from happening, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, and again, say what we want about SoulQuest, I, as a legal expert, still support their religious claim, right? Just because I'm interested in the outcome, what it means for the whole of the space. And hopefully, as this becomes hopefully a little more black and white towards religious protection, we'll be able to then come out further out in the open. And here's the deal with SoulQuest. Hell, they've been openly operating since 2017. They have billboards and shit, So, like, obviously, that's where a lot of people are going to land. And again, I'm really not a huge fan of SoulQuest. I'm a huge fan of the religious exemption, right? So that's kind of why I'm on that side. I didn't mean to downplay Mr. Begley's death or nothing like that. Like, my impression is that there were some idiots involved, and that's why this happened, unfortunately, right?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sasha.
Yeah. To use the word you just used, the idiots who were involved then are still running the church and are still allowing those cases of neglect to happen.
Well, again, we'll let the court system answer that question of negligence, right? I'm just going based off what I heard as far as, through the grapevine, what I heard about the situation that day. I think some ego got, and look, I'm not a fan, and to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of SoulQuest leadership either, right?
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Can I pause you for a second? You just said you heard it through the grapevine. So would that be hearsay?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't consider it conclusive per se, right? Because I heard it third-party hearsay, okay? Again, not saying the people who I've heard it from weren't credible or anything like that. I'm just saying, as far as the legal case is concerned, I want to let the judicial process play itself out. But my initial impression that there probably was some negligence going on, perhaps gross negligence going on there, right? But as far as like making that for sure call, I want to let the judge or jury make that call. My personal opinion is just that, my personal opinion, right? But really, again, my support of SoulQuest is their religious exemption, right? And hopefully through that process, some people will get shed. To be honest, I really think for them to have the best chance, there's going to be a person probably at the top that needs to step down, right? I do. I believe that the guy at the top of it is, let his ego override his better sense. And I think that might have even had a part to play in this incident that happened, right? But again, some very competent people that are also SoulQuest, right? People that I know wouldn't never intentionally hurt somebody or anything like that. So you have a mix of people there. I'm telling you, I know some people there that I respect for. I have some other people I haven't heard very good things about. So it's really a mixed bag. But again, I'm not co-signing any particular thing of theirs, but what I am co-signing is I want the religious exemption for the effect that it's going to have on the space, because I do feel that that's going to be a step towards wider disclosure and more accountability, right? Because again, SoulQuest's been openly operating and advertising since 2017, so that's why they can have 100-person ceremony, which is ridiculous, by the way. But if more people felt more comfortable in doing that, then perhaps people would have better options, and perhaps that the knowledge about SoulQuest would be more widespread. You see what I'm saying? It's a catch-22 that we're at. I hate that we're there. I'm really fighting to where, and again, like I was saying earlier, I'm creating a church association to help set some standards on safety and screening, to help set standards with diversion, and try to come up with good practices and protocols that we can hold people accountable on, right? Have a committee of people to where if there's substantial allegations, they can come to the committee and we can hear evidence. And then if it's against what we're saying our standards are, we can drop the people, make a public statement, say, hey, they're no longer with us for reasons XYZ. This is what we found after, again, an informal, non-legal hearing, but still within our organization, due process afforded. Yeah, I do want to create that organization because I feel that as at this point in time, there isn't any other organization doing anything like that.
Man, I just want to say, like, before, Tristan has a really important topic that he wants to bring in here for the last 10 minutes. But I just want to say that this is a huge concern of mine and ours as a board at Sanctuary. Mm-hmm. We're getting ready to start the minister ordination program in January. We've been training clerics. We got another cleric cycle training coming up. And the more we, put people out there working with the public, then it opens up doors for problems. And it's something that, we're trying to think, how do we create an organization that can safely outlive us? And I don't know right now, because human personality is deceptive, dynamic, and beautiful, and a wonderful reflection of our Creator as well. Tristan, go ahead. I think I've been wanting to talk about this as well. So Tristan, bring it in.
Yeah. So I don't know how familiar you all are with this. SSDP was part of the partnership with Decrim Nature that really helped Michigan obtain the status that it now has regarding psychedelics. And here recently, they ceased their partnership, and it was supposed to cover multiple states to really help the youth as well as the adults get legislation regarding psychedelics at a local and state level. But they said it was linked. I haven't been able to find the quote, but they said that the reason was it was Decrim Nature making allegations about David Bronner, and it regarded a lot to do with his race, and it turned into an anti-Semitic notion from the leadership of Decrim Nature.
I can actually comment on this. I know a fair deal about it.
Yes,
I don't mean to...
would love for you to do this, because I've been a big Decrim Nature fan, and then I'm founded a chapter in SSDP, so both of those are really close to my heart, and I'm curious to what you have to say here, you two.
I've always been of the persuasion that drug use, drug possession should not be a criminal offense. In fact, the Supreme Court in 1962 said about just as much. If you look into the case of Robinson v. California, really interesting decision, but I'll sidestep that really quick.
Yeah. If you could send it, I'd like to look at it. Apologize about that.
I'll actually send it to you. It's really worthy of discussion. But getting back to Decrim, I have supported Decrim in the past. I personally split with them once they continue to argue in favor of the decriminalization of peyote, which is a whole topic unto itself, which I won't get into. But they talked about the SSDP split, and that started about a month ago when this GIF, this 300 pixel by 200 pixel GIF. Was being shared by a number of Decrim Nature officials, if I'm not mistaken, Carlos Pozzola and Larry Norris. And in that picture, there was a graph diagram flowchart sort of how all these different people in the space are connected to this indigenous peyote conservation initiative in Texas. And this supposed plot between these actors, David Bronner, Miriam Velat of MAPS, Cody Swift of River Styx, and a few other people, and how they are all seemingly conspiring together to create a false scarcity of peyote, and to all these different allegations. And the thing that made it anti-Semitic was the fact that there were yellow stars of David that highlighted the specific individuals who were involved in this plot, and those same people who were highlighted with stars, mind you, are Jewish. When Carlos was actually confronted on the matter in a private not Skype, Signal thread. From what I read of the conversation, he continually sidestepped the concerns about anti-Semitism to drive home this point. And it just seemed that he wasn't really accepting the nature of the situation, what people were grasping from it, because in fact, Stars of David have been used as anti-Semitic tropes in years past. And I think it's a shame that the foolish actions of some have led whole organizations to distance themselves from people who could be doing great work in this space. But again, those people are, in my opinion, making foolish decisions by starting beefs that aren't creating baseless allegations, essentially, because those allegations were in fact baseless. If you read Dr. Bronner's statement, he goes in depth on the matter and clarifies the entire thing for everyone to hear. There's an official statement if you go on Doc Bronner's website, but I'd love to hear what other people have to say.
Greg, I know this is kind of the fullest picture I've heard of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like we were saying earlier, this is one of those things in this space that just drives so much disunion, right? It's like for you to take peyote and be like, this medicine's so beautiful, but you can't have it. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes absolutely no sense to me. And to me, it's really reverse racism. But, here's the deal. And Carlos did make a good point. There's like 6 million Mexican Americans in America with lineage back to the Huichol religion, who are the original peyote religion. They're not even being discussed, right? I mean, it's like, and the fact is that peyote, and here's the deal, is that the experts agree that peyote will go extinct in its natural habitat in relatively short time if action is not taken to purposely cultivate it, right? And so by eliminating and criminalizing people trying to do that, they're just ensuring the extinction of peyote. The first time I ever sat in a teepee in South Texas, I'll never forget. I sat in a teepee ceremony. The dude serving medicine sat there and bashed me and an elderly white couple for like 5 hours, making racist, like, underhanded comments and stuff to us the entire time. It was a complete joke. And it's crazy because that's when I first started in this space. And like through that experience, almost just completely turned me off from doing anything. And it's just crazy. I don't know what it is about peyote, but it seems like the more people like take it and like put it into their, well, except the Huichols, it's crazy, man. It's like, this medicine's beautiful and can change people. Not for white people. It's like, oh, I just never had that experience on the medicine. I've always had like a cosmic unitive experience where I realized that all is one and that we should share all our gifts with all of humanity, right? And it's like, so that's my thoughts on it. I do support Carlos. I don't believe that he would have done anything anti-Semitic. David Bronner, I mean, I've never met him or talked to him. I've been shown some pretty vulgar stuff he sent to people. So I don't know what's up with him. But yeah, I just stay out of it, man. It's real discord and disunion. I've got my personal views. I don't try to impress those upon anybody. I'm just going to kind of let the situation play out. At the end of the day, again, like I said, this is all divine order, sequence, and karma. It's a very complex situation, and whichever it turns out, I'll just trust that it's the best. I just hate that it really separates people a lot, and I just, again, not saying these issues don't need to be talked about or ferreted out, but I feel like it's got really divisive, and there's been a lot of personal attack stuff. It's one of those things, y'all. If you ever see me avoid it, and it really does, it was surprised that I'm talking about it now, but I just wanted to interject for a second. But yeah, when I see people going back and forth online about it, for the most part, I just try to stay away just because I see it really separating people. And it's a hot topic, and yeah, there's implications on both sides. And granted, and that's not to say I don't like Native Americans are fine with me. I had a terrible experience in a teepee, but I don't hold that against all the people. I've made peace with the guy who did it. It's water under the bridge. But that's kind of just been my experience with it. But again, I love everybody. I hope everybody can just try to get along and resolve it the best we can. But yeah, it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
You ever eaten peyote before, Eric?
No, I have not. I have not. I would certainly take the opportunity. It's my consideration has been its scarcity. but I also know
too.
that
I'll never go back to another one. Just
well, I guess the wild harvest is where I would have the problem. But the same thing comes up with ayahuasca. The same thing comes up with iboga, and these are the preservation topic is, to me, that's really near and dear to my heart, because like if it wasn't for these medicines, then we wouldn't be here having this conversation right now. That's one of the reasons that one of the behind some of the conscious choice that I made to move into mushrooms is that they are the sustainable psychedelic, if you will.
That's correct, man. I agree.
Right. But mushrooms have also just always kind of been, my friends. I mean, even as a kid, I just had a fascination with fungi. So, I think there's so much value in what everybody's bringing to this conversation. I really appreciate this conversation. It's such a big topic, especially considering how few actual leaders there are in the field. And the vast majority of leaders, quote, leaders, have very little experience. This is sober. I mean, I look around, and sometimes of the contemporary psychedelic people, like I've been in this thing for 25 years, and I still consider myself an infant in it. Like this is such a small window in our span of time, and to see where this all goes in this divine order, I do. And that's kind of the point that I was trying to drive home, Sasha, last week. A little too aggressively, I feel like, and I've apologized to you for that, and I apologize to the listeners. I do feel like I got too defensive, I got too aggressive, because what my overall belief through my work with the medicine is that we're not in control, and this thing, meaning all of life, is sorting itself out. And if I can't get mad at Donald Trump or Joe Biden or fucking whoever is the leader of America or whatever country, like if I see those people as some kind of manifestation of a deeper spiritual reality that is trying to find a balance for itself, trying to bring some balance in the long view, then I take the same perspective on the psychedelic world. I try to anyway. It's a little harder for me because I have been attacked, because there is personal skin in the game. But at the same time, as a spiritual practitioner, excuse me, my belief is that I don't like the word God, but whatever it is that's behind the scenes, if it's the fifth dimension, that is, if you guys ever get a chance, man, I wish I could remember the name of this YouTube video, but there is an there's some incredible research that seems to show that there is a dimension, I believe it's the fifth dimension, that everything that we are experiencing, from us talking, just the blades of grass moving, that everything that we are experiencing is a shadow of this unfolding higher mathematical dimension. And if that's the case, as it seems to be, then we're not in control. We're not running the show.
Yeah, that's right.
So I try more and more to enjoy the ride. Like Bill Hicks said, I grew up in a very critical world. My father just constantly tell me everything that I did that wasn't right. And I have taken that perspective into my life far more than I'd like to admit. And I'm really trying to continually, consciously disengage from that, see things as they are, accept them as they are, love them as they are, and trust that the process is working itself out. So I really appreciate all of you all being a part of this process. I think we have many more wonderful conversations ahead of us. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Sasha, thanks for coming back on. I really appreciate the conversation that we had, and you just, like being able to come back on here. This is what I live for. I live for having fucking hard conversations, disagreeing sometimes, and still being able to reconcile and say, all right, well, let's just keep fucking trying to figure this thing out. Tristan, always appreciate you, my brother. Thank you so much for everything that you do for Sanctuary and on Psilocybin. Everybody, till next time, thanks so much.
Peace, brother.
Peace.